I'm very pleased to introduce our expert and experienced panel for this panel session. If you've been watching the earlier presentations, you've already met them, but just to say who they are again, we have Martin Price, who's chair of the UK Man the Biosphere Committee. He's the man who signs off applications for UK biospheres to UNESCO. We have Ed Forrest from Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere. He's the coordinator of a large and geographically different biosphere reserve in southwest Scotland. And we've got Paul Silcock from Cumulus Consultants, who prepared the report on the economic and social value of the Fens Biosphere. And I'm Roger Mitchell, chair of the Fens Biosphere Partnership Steering Committee, and I'm going to try and host this session. So we're going to start the discussion by me asking the panel members individually to give their answers to a question they were previously posed. And after that, we will open the discussion by considering questions arising from the earlier sessions put by you on live chat. And I've got some of these in front of me now. These questions have been collected by Mark Knockett, and I'll ask him to pop up and reveal them for the panel's response if I can't manage to read them all. We intend to put the questions and answers on the Fens Biosphere website, including answers to questions we probably won't have time to deal with today, so keep your eyes on that. Okay, I'll start now with the pre-posed question to each of the participants, and this pre-posed question was, on which key areas of work do you think we should focus on in the Fens Biosphere? And I know you've already made presentations on this, but in answering this, you may wish to reiterate or reinforce points you already made in your presentations. So Martin, could I start with you, please?
Okay, thank you very much, Roger. I've really enjoyed the presentations so far. Hopefully mine was useful. I guess thinking about this, we want to emphasize that the biosphere is really a platform or a forum for partnership working, as has been, I think, mentioned in all of the different presentations. And in addition to that, I did mention in my presentation, but we need to not just do the working, but actually have some strategic long-term thinking. And in fact, UNESCO requires some sort of policy or plan for thinking strategically ahead. But there are two areas that haven't been mentioned so much today. I'm among all the ones that have been there, that all are correct and full and necessary. But the two areas that haven't been mentioned so much, which I think are very important, are in relation to research and development. That to do all the things we want to do in a biosphere, it's important to involve the local research and development organizations, universities, research organizations, and others in actually doing work that will support the aims of the biosphere. And certainly from universities, those can include both opportunities for staff and for students to do really meaningful research. And the second is in relation to education. Again, using the experiences in the biosphere as opportunities for learning for people at all levels, from primary schools up to university and even beyond with lifelong learning, to really look towards the future and think about, how, as I think it was, I don't remember. Anyway, one of the presentations mentioned green behavior and sustainable lifestyles. That's one of the main things you want to think about in the Biosphere Reserve. Education, knowledge exchange, best practice are the ways to move that. And certainly if you can start with the kids, they will be doing that hopefully for the rest of their lives as they stay in the area. And they will encourage, we hope, their parents and grandparents and other family members to do all these great things, such as you saw in the film from Ed Forrest and the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere. So those are some thoughts from me. Hope those are useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin. I could say about research and development. Well, the research side, certainly there is a growing interest in the concept of the Fens Biosphere in Cambridge. There's a huge collection of environmental NGOs there under who are headquartered in the David Attenborough building, the Cambridge Conservation Initiative. and the Fens Biosphere is now on the agenda for an area which some of them might actually start to show some interest in helping us. Well, they are indicating that already, so I'm pleased to say that. So to go back to the question again, could I then turn to you, Ed, and you maybe spot things that you're doing in your Biosphere that we should be doing in ours. So over to you with your thoughts.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Roger. I mean, I think speaking from our perspective and based on some of the things that we did in Galloway in Southern Ayrshire, I think the key thing was that throughout the development phase, we've done a huge amount of community engagement, but we felt it was really important that you couldn't just stop as soon as you got the designation. You actually had to actively go out and carry that on. So we very hard on communications, going out, attending events, speaking to community organisations, working with other local authority type bodies, trying to raise the profile, getting people to recognise that the Biosphere was here now, and trying to get people starting to think about what the difference to Biosphere could actually make. And so we developed two key strands, I think, that really helped us facilitate that. One was an idea that we took from some of our colleagues in Canada, which was looking at a Biosphere Charter, which was a very simplistic, well, actually, in fairness, ours started off very complicated, and we then honed it back down to six very simple that people could sign up to show their commitment to the ethos of the Biosphere, which were based on helping to conserve natural resources, supporting the local economy, promoting cultural heritage, contributing to health and well-being, feeding into developing knowledge and research and understanding, and raising awareness of the Biosphere. And what that did was that gave us a means of engaging with people, of building up a database of people who were warned, who we could then communicate with afterwards. And what it began to do was it began to give those individuals, organisations and businesses a means of using the Biosphere, in that they became Biosphere proud supporters. So it gave them a logo that they could stick on their website or they could put in their window to show that they supported the Biosphere. And it enabled us to start engaging with them and developing networking events. And probably things that came out of that, which again we took from another organisation, the Forest of Bowland Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, was they had developed a sense of place toolkit that they had used really actively to tell the story of how businesses and organisations connect with the natural and cultural heritage of their area. And we took that and we developed that for our Biosphere. And those two things, I think, helped us to begin to sort of gain momentum and understanding and begin to make a difference so that people could see how the Biosphere could actually be used by them. The challenge we really faced was that there's so many things that we would like to do, but you've only got limited resources and capacity, and it's trying to be quite focused in the beginning as to what you can do and what you can't do. But that's kind of the starter for us, I guess.
Well, thanks, Ed. What was the adding to the village name signs? Was that part of what you just said? Communications. I mean, how did you achieve that?
Yeah, the Biosphere Communities Initiative came further down the road. It was we used the Proud Supporter system, became a really useful way of hooking people in as a very easy engaging with the Biosphere, very non-committal, could all be done online or could be done in person. And then from that, we then developed for communities to become Biosphere communities, where again, we used the Sense of Place toolkit to identify what was special about their local community so that they could actively begin to promote themselves as part of the UNESCO Biosphere. We're now looking at how we can take that on another level to start supporting in developing sustainability initiatives and projects. We also then developed from that Proud Supporter Biosphere certification scheme that we now run with businesses, where businesses can then be actively certified, which involves a higher level of audit. awful lot of it starts with that crowd supporter system of first sort of getting people engaged, getting them beginning to think and understand what the biosphere is, and then through that being able to have that relationship in a way that is suitable for the different organisations, businesses, individuals that works for them.
Well, thanks, Ed. That's a great bit of cross-learning for us. Much appreciated. Right, Paul, over to you. What's your view? What do you think we should be doing from your wearing your socioeconomic hat?
Well, hi everyone. We've set out in the report what we, based on sort of the data and the plans and strategies and evidence from elsewhere, we try to sketch out how we think the Fens biosphere can add value going forward. We've done that with the best evidence available to us, speaking to people and obviously the steering group and so on. And I think through this forum, through this conference, I think it'd be really beneficial to get some feedback on what we have put forward in terms of some of the actions and the outputs and potential long-term outcomes that could be achieved with the benefit of a Fens biosphere. I'd like to ask everyone, really, those organisations and people who are attending, if you get a chance to look at the report or the summary, do you recognise the potential that we've set out there? Are you excited about it? And how can it be refined? If we've not got it quite right, or we've missed something out, let's try and get a better understanding of some of the challenges and some of the potential that we think a Fens biosphere can bring by bringing a real focus on long-term sustainable development in the Fens area. And I think getting that feedback would help give us a better understanding, everyone to be engaged, and then we can start developing a shared vision from that.
Well, thanks, Paul. Your report is on the Fens Biosphere website. Now, do you want those comments to come to you or to Mark and Rachel?
I think Mark and Rachel probably. Okay. I'm very happy to chat to people, speak to people, but I think Mark and Rachel are the ones who are kind of coordinating things.
Okay, so for the participants watching in on this, so the report is on the website, and the contacts for Rachel and Mark are also on the Fens Biosphere website. Thanks, Paul. Right, okay. We have a technical question. It's what are the next stages through which the boundaries of the biosphere will be determined? Well, I can probably answer that one because it is now open to consultation, and I'm not sure when consultation closes, but it's quite soon. But it's open to consultation now. But along with that is when will they be finalised? Well, they'll be, I suppose, finalised when we put in our final application. And is there scope for amending these boundaries post-submission? So perhaps, Martin, I could put that to you, really. What is the scope for amending boundaries post-submission? In other words, once the biosphere is established.
Well, even before then, in fact, you will be submitting the application to UNESCO. It then goes through checking by the MAB Secretariat, which, if there are any questions, including around boundaries, will come back to you. It then goes to an international advisory committee, and again, they may ask questions, including about boundaries. So at those 2 points, there may be times, and if there's some ongoing process that you need to take into consideration, that could be dealt with during that period. So that's basically from September of the year you submit until sometime in the spring. After the approval, one hopes it will be approved the next summer. Yes, it is possible to change boundaries.
Oh, isn't that?
Rachel, I see you're back in. Do you know what's going on? What we can do now?
So we need Rachel. We need to know if the participants are seeing what they're seeing now, don't we?
Rachel, I just see your question. No, I cannot hear you. Sorry. But for the participants, I've been going through the questions, and
right.
I've made some notes there, so don't worry.
We've got all the presenters. I've started the recording back up again, and I think all the attendees, just checking through the attendees, I think most of the attendees are still here.
I'm just seeing us as postage stamp size.
Yeah, I haven't moved us over to big yet.
I see, thanks.
Yeah, that's okay. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my video and then move us over to big so that people aren't quite so panicky about that.
Okay.
We've lost Martin.
We've lost Martin.
Are we live with participants now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sorry about that. Technical problems. We all got shoved off somehow. So, Martin was just finishing.
Martin's back.
Oh, Martin.
So it's just Mark that we've lost now. Right.
Okay, well, I was saying that Martin had just finished. I think you'd more or less finished talking about the boundaries, Martin.
Yeah, well, yeah, just to say, I mean, yes, boundaries can be amended. Usually after designation, it's done when there's the periodic review process, but it can be done in the interim as well. But usually you wait for the 10-year process.
Fine. Okay, thanks. Mark Knocker, don't go. Can you come back?
I'm here.
Mark, would you answer the question, please, about our process here? So we're open to consultation on boundaries. Would you like to just explain how that's going to proceed, please?
Thank you, Roger. Yes, indeed. The consultation went live at the start of December and will run until the end of January. We have, on the back of a range of partner discussions, come up with a proposed geography boundary. And the consultation is very much around the outer boundaries in particular, which are based on legally defined parish and town council boundaries. So the question is really which parishes you feel may also be added or perhaps taken away. You think, what is the comprehensive area that would make one logical identity, one big Fens biosphere? And we really want everybody's opinion on it, whether they come from organizations or individuals. We can take all comments. Please do so. Thank you. And I'll put the link in the chat again.
Thanks a lot, Mark. We have another question here, which is really about the buffer zone. That's the bit around the core area. The question is about how we who determines what is, well, the word is what is allowed in the question. I think really in biosphere terms it's what is encouraged. So who determines what is encouraged, and have existing businesses been consulted about potential impacts on their activities, if there are any? Do you want to give a generic answer to that, Martin?
Well, I'm just looking at the official document here. And the official words are that within the buffer zone, only activities compatible with the conservation objectives can take place. So that's pretty broad, and it can be interpreted quite widely. So that is the general point that I would make, that it should connect to it's meant to be the buffer for the core area with its conservation objectives. And I think the way you're thinking through that in the Fens is very sensible. Okay,
thanks, Martin. And Ed wants to go. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that actually, as Martin knows, we've had some challenges in our biosphere about the buffer zone. And I think it's probably the area that, for me, has the most ambiguity about what is or what isn't acceptable. And I would suggest that at this stage, if possible, to try and get some sort of clear agreement as to what is acceptable when you're doing your sort of application to anticipate happening there. Because it certainly created one or two challenges for us, partly as organisational needs have changed, often through changes in government policy, which have driven them, and it's caused a few questions for us anyway that we're still sort of working through.
Fine, thanks a lot, Ben. There's another question about sort of well, it's about planning matters really. I think we've probably already dealt with this, but I think it's a quite important one. It's do biospheres have any influence on planning matters, and how do we see this panning out for the Fens biosphere? So we've already said it's not a statutory designation, but who would like to sort of tackle that one, please? Ed, please.
I mean, what we've done in Galloway and Southern Ayrshire, our biosphere covers 3 different local authorities, and so and each of those local authorities has a local development plan. So whilst we're not a statutory designation as such, we have worked closely with the local planners to get the biosphere acknowledged within their local development plans, and that acknowledgement is also acknowledging the difference between the different zones of the biosphere, between the core, the buffer and the transition. And what they ask developers to do is to take account of those different requirements for the zones of the biosphere when they're sort of making any decisions. And so again, as a biosphere, we've also drawn up a position statement as a Biosphere Partnership Board on the activities that we think are appropriate to each of those different zones. So very much, our area is obviously very much about the sort of designated areas for conservation. As Martin has already said, the buffer zone is about that sort of that sort of continuity and that connectivity between different areas, for their ecological values, into that sense of place, and that sort of sense of place you get from those areas, and then the transition area being very much focused on the wide development and really wanting to sort of promote sustainable type initiatives and developments. But that's increasingly working well for us, I think. And it's perhaps preferable to having anything too sort of hard in the sand, if you like, a line that you can or cannot cross.
Would Paul or Martin like to come in on that question, or before we've dealt with that?
I just briefly, Roger. I hope that if this works out well, then this will be a partnership between people, communities, businesses and local authorities, and that over time we're increasingly trying to get onto a more sustainable track. Everyone really needs to do that if we're taking a long-term perspective, and so there will be, I think there will be increasing alignment, and I would hope that those businesses and others in the buffer zone, for example, will recognise the value in trying to move onto a more sustainable footing, and therefore we kind of move away from the potential for divergence, if you like, or conflict. So I would hope that some of these concerns will be ameliorated over time.
Thanks a lot, Paul. We've got about 5 minutes left of this. I've got a question, some questions coming about tourism and active travel, tourism in the Fens. I mean, there's not a lot of tourism at the moment. Would anyone like to tackle opportunities for tourism? I know you, okay, Ed, off you go.
I mean, I can certainly talk about what we've done. I mean, we've actually found that the tourism has been a really easy way, I think, of demonstrating how the biosphere can sort of connect together businesses, communities, the culture of the area in telling that story and bringing about economic development to local people. So we actively use the sort of biosphere as a way of promoting the area as a destination and promoting key communities as destinations. And it's particularly using the UNESCO elements of that. So we always talk about it as the Galway and Southern Ayrshire UNESCO Biosphere, because it's that UNESCO branded, which, although there are stipulations on how you can actively use that, but it's that association with UNESCO that I think sort of really reflects the quality, if you like, of what we have within our biosphere.
Thanks, Ed. Paul, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just say there's huge potential in the Fens because we're starting from a relatively low base in tourism, and there are, I know there's been kind of regional-wide initiatives as well as local, but as you say, Ed, it's got a great profile. It's an obvious area for using the Biosphere brand. It will not only help develop the visitor economy, and that will support job creation and business development. But by doing so, we will all of us who kind of live in the Fens area will also get a better understanding of the things on our doorstep, the things of value, which at the moment are probably probably less well known, if you like.
Could I just add one point, which is that we had an EU-funded project called SHAPE, and if you go to www.shapingecotourism.eu, you will find all the tools, and it basically looked at exactly this question of how to develop ecotourism, which is in the broad sense within biosphere reserves. So that's an example of the sort of project that one can get involved with as a biosphere, but also has direct relevance for the person who asked this question.
Right, thank you. We've got quite a lot of questions coming in about water. I mean, in the southern part of this area, we've got the chalk streams drying up, a lack of water. There are proposals for reservoirs, downstream reservoirs, to harvest some of the water going out to sea. And there's also talk about re-wetting parts of the Fens for paludiculture. Would anyone like to sort of come in on that? So, obviously the Fens are there by virtue of the fact that they were created by the water. Is there any thoughts from any of the panel members on the water and the Fens, either the harvesting, the use of it for paludiculture, or what we're going to do about the chalk streams?
It's quite a location-specific question, I guess, and therefore maybe Ed and Martin may feel free to come in. But there are a number of water issues, aren't there, which we kind of like touch on a bit in the work that we've done. Potential water shortage, flooding risk. As you say, the opportunities for using some land for re-wetting land and habitat creation and connectivity. We're in one of the driest areas of the country, and that challenge is only going to get greater as we move on. So I think there's some pretty impressive work going on at the moment by Water East and partners, and beginning to think about managing the water resource and taking a long-term view, and the Internal Drainage Board, Middle-Level Commissioners, etc., are obviously involved with that as well as the Environment Agency. But we need to be smart about how we manage water. And I think what I would say about the Fens Biosphere is that I would hope it would be both contributing to that effort and also enabling better water usage going forward. We need to be encouraging better resource efficiency in terms of water. There's probably a lot to talk about, but it's a big issue, well raised, a lot to get our teeth into. But I think Fens Biosphere, if that can help us get us into a more sustainable track, we will at least be working together to address some of those challenges.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Well, we're near at the end of the session, so I think I better bring things to a close. So I'd like to thank you, Ed, Paul, and Martin for being on the panel, and thank you for answering the questions we've posed. There are other questions. As I said earlier, we would we'll look at all the questions that have been posted on chat, and we will put those on the website and answer them alongside with the questions that have been answered just now. So I'd like to thank you again, and I'd like to thank all the participants looking in. It's now, according to my watch at least, the lunch break. Are there any notices or information from the organising crew, from Mark or Rachel, if you're there? Or do we just sign off?
No, I'll sign everybody off. Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, well, thank you very much for hosting that, Roger. I say there's lots and lots of really good questions coming in there. So we will endeavour to answer as many as we possibly can, get them on the Fens Biosphere website. So it is lunchtime now. So there's plenty of opportunities to go to the networking lounge, ask questions, and go to the exhibition hall as well and look at the stands. And then back for 1:30 for the afternoon workshops. Thank you very much. Apologies for the break in the middle of it all. It wasn't intentional. That was an accident. But everybody seems to have recovered really well from it. So well done. And thank you very much. Have a nice lunchtime.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.